Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you some of my summer reading recommendations. So I think summer is probably one of my favorite times to read. I really love reading in winter and summer, and I think summer is a really good time to really focus on either books that take place in hot settings, or if they're very complex, like I feel like nonfiction is the perfect, like summer is a perfect time to read nonfiction, because I feel like, especially for me being a student, like I can devote more brain power to reading those. So I feel like this is a mix of series, really intense historical fiction and nonfiction. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting out with this series, I feel like you guys are gonna guess what I'm gonna say, but I feel like the summer is the perfect time to marathon series and just be immersed in those world and like those characters. So if you guys can probably guess what I'm gonna say, and it is the Inspector Gamache series by Louise. I have fallen deeply in love with this series, and I just love it so much. Like, this series brings me so much comfort, and I think that's really special, especially because I think there's like at least like 16 books out, so you can just be immersed in this world for months, which is amazing. But basically the premise of the story, it follows Inspector Gamache, who is head of the homicide detective, or he is the head of the homicide department in Quebec, and he gets involved with these investigation and murders that take place in the small quaint town of Three Pines. I think what is really unique about this series is just the really focus on the ensemble cast and sense of found family, and just how much connections and these special relationships and bonds that we form with people, how those are important. And there's really a highlight in here of empathy and just a lot of important themes that I think make this series really unique. And so not only does it take place in my home country of Canada, it like is just amazing, and it kind of helps with my homesickness of not being able to see my family back home in Toronto, so it kind of helps with that. So it makes me feel better. I will say Still Life is not my favorite of the series. I think it is definitely after the second book where things really start to pick up and you get to figure out the different characters and the dynamics of everything. So yeah, like I said, I am in love with this series and I will never stop praising it. Next up, this is a historical fiction that actually reminds me of summer, because this was the summer reading I had to do going into actually grade 11. I was going to say grade 10, but it was actually going into grade 11, and this is one of the few books that I read for school that I actually enjoyed, and it is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. Like I said, I read this book when I was going into grade 11, and I've never really read anything like this. So Erik Larson writes a lot of nonfiction, and he does it in a way that it doesn't feel like you're reading a history textbook. He does integrate a lot of journal entries or newspaper kind of like headings into here, so it is very much based on historical documents, but he writes it in a way that is almost a novelization of these events, and it kind of flows like historical fiction, even though it's literally a nonfiction book, which I think is unique. And I think this makes his writing style makes it accessible to people who may, be first starting out with nonfiction. So I think that's really unique. And this one in particular, because we were living in Chicago at the time when I read this, so it was also really special as well. But it follows what was tagged as the first kind of serial killer in America, and so it follows, I think his name is like H.H. Holmes, or I don't remember, but it follows the first serial killer who used the Chicago World Fair as a way to lure women into his hotel and kill them. And so it talks about the construction of the World Fair in Chicago, like what was going on, how they were building it, all the problems with it being built. And then we also follow the serial killer's upbringing and eventually what he was doing with these murders, which I think is really interesting. Like I said, I love this book. It's all highlighted. I loved it. I actually think I should reread it, because it does a very good, it really delves into nature versus nurture, which I think is very interesting, and it's just, like I said, it's a very good nonfiction book for people that aren't used to nonfiction, but you will literally be engrossed in the story of the serial killer and all of that stuff. So next I have a historical fiction novel that I think you guys will really like, and I feel like this is like summer would be the perfect time to read it, and it is Dragonfly by Leila Meacham. And so this is takes place during World War II, so it follows, I want to say like it's 10 years post-war, and this guy who was a head of a spy group ends up stumbling upon a book that is talking about his group called the Dragonfly and their contribution to the war efforts based on their spying. And he finds something in there that very much kind of scratches his head, saying that all 6 members of Dragonfly were able to come out of Nazi-occupied France alive. And that confuses him because, to his understanding, one person did not make it out alive. So he ends up contacting the different people in the Dragonfly group to really kind of see like what is going on. And so we get flashbacks to all these people being recruited for Dragonfly, their training, and then ultimately their experience in Nazi-occupied France, and then what ultimately led to the death of one of their members. And so I really like this one because you're trying to figure out who is the one that is like being like who is the one that is supposedly supposed to be dead. And so you're trying to figure everything out, but then you get different perspectives of their experiences spying in France, and then how their stories start to weave and like connect and all this stuff, which I thought was really interesting. But like I said, it's super suspenseful. I really like this, and I want to pick up more books by this author. I really loved her writing style. I really loved the characters. I loved how even though we're following different perspectives, the storylines and narratives were still able to flow through different characters. And I think the spy aspect in here was really interesting as well. I feel like this one just screams summer for me because it's hot. Like, this book is like, it's hot out, it's just, you know, typical summer weather, and it just totally reminds me of it. And it is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction novel that came out earlier this year that follows a girl named Elsa who was never really loved by her family, and so when she finds someone who actually, you know, gives her attention, she ends up falling in love with him, and they end up having a mistake where they have to get married. So she's involved with this loveless marriage. And so while this is all going on, where she's raising 2 kids, so there is the Dust Bowl going on, which was basically this drought that overtook a big portion of America, and so she is struggling to keep her family alive, keep her farm, you know, thriving, when basically the world around them is dying, surrounded by dust, there's no water, all this is going on. So I really loved this book. I literally cried with the ending. Like, that's how much I was invested in this story. But I feel like a lot of Kristen Hanna books, although they do center around female stories and narratives, really center around different ways of surviving. And so this one follows Elsa and her family's struggle with surviving during this difficult time. Not only is the US in a big depression, but there is also all this outside, basically where the world is dying around her, and how she eventually learns to find bravery in here. And I think because, like, I actually, like, reading this, I was anxious throughout the entire time just reading it. That's how invested I was in these characters and what they were going through. Like, I was anxious all the time for them, and I could, like, feel the dirt, like, in my mouth, in my, like, just being covered in dirt, just the way these characters were. And it was so atmospheric in here, and it blew me away. So if you're looking for a really gripping historical fiction novel that takes place in an era that isn't really talked about a lot, then I think you will really like this. And lastly, this is a nonfiction novel that I think a lot of you guys will like, and it is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And this basically talks about the brief history of humankind and how humans evolved to where we are today. So I did one of my double majors during my undergrad was in anthropology, so I was really excited for this one. I more kind of gravitate towards physical anthropology and just the actual events of human evolution, like physiologically, so I was more interested in that, and I wish this book went into it. This one kind of focuses more on the cultural anthropology side of human evolution. So you know, the invention of religion and clans and groups and cities, and how these kind of practices evolved into what we have today, and how that shaped our world and how people are the way that they are now, which I think is really interesting. He kind of has a few books out now kind of evolving humanity, not only in the past but also present and in the future. So like this one deals with how humans evolved to where we are now. His second book, Homo Deus, is where he sees humans going in the future, and then he has a new book called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, but if you are interested in kind of learning more about why we are the way that we are, and like how historical events and ideologies really shaped where we are now, then I think you will really like this. Like I said, I'm more of a physical anthropology person, so there was some stuff in here that I didn't enjoy as much, especially this is very heavy on religion, which I can see is very important in the, you know, evolution of humans. But as someone who isn't religious, this wasn't, like, those parts weren't for me, and I just kind of skimmed through them. But if you're interested in learning why we are the way they are, I think this is a good book to kind of pick up. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what are the books on your summer TBR. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your summer reading recommendations are and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.